Oh, that can't be good.
After a very lengthy break doing other things, the band behind the Indiana Jones series got back together to make another entry in the hit franchise, but it was one that left fans scratching their heads in bewilderment.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, that can't be good at all.
Sometimes, try as you might, things don't go so well. Here is a belated sequel to a beloved franchise with all of the principles present, but the audiences soured on it pretty quickly, like adding white vinegar to cream. Before I get started, be aware I'm not going to just totally eviscerate this film, mark it as the worst film of all time, or say, movie is poopy.
Are you nuts?
In fact, there's quite a bit that's entertaining and fun, at least until halfway, when the silliness threatens to overwhelm the fun, like when Auntie Beryl brought her new crossbow to a kid's birthday party.
Want to be a good archaeologist? You gotta get out of the library!
We'll attempt to look at what worked and what didn't work, and then what really didn't work. And then we'll use asteroid strikes to demonstrate franchise rankings. No, seriously, asteroids.
Get this guy.
Who?
Joe College hit him hard.
Here, hold this.
What?
That's my boyfriend!
It's 1957. Well, look, not literally at the second you're watching this, unless somebody has discovered a way to fold a space while folding sheets. In the film, it's 1957, and some Russian troops infiltrate an American military facility in Nevada. Oh, let's not start that Nevada shit again. I looked it up, there were diagrams and everything. The Russians have brought along an expert, or kidnapped more accurately. Oh look, it's Indiana Jones. And his offsider since at least the Second World War, Mac. The pair are needed by the leader of the Russian delegation / commandos, Dr. Irina Spalko. They're looking for something in a warehouse with a giant 51 printed on the door. Oh my god, it's Unit 51, or is that Location 51? Or maybe it's Place 51. Anyway, Indy finds what they're looking for only to find Mac has switched sides, which is a bit like my mate Dickhead David, who passionately supports whichever Premier League team looks most likely to win the FA Cup that week. I mean, there's a man with more scarves than a Doctor Who convention.
Damn, I thought that was closer.
Indy escapes, pursued by the Russian guerrilla Dovchenko, and thanks to a fortuitously placed rocket sled, ends up in a desert town that just happens to be part of an atomic test. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull offers the discerning viewer many jumping off points, or for some, these events might best be described as the series turbo boosting over sharks. In the first such jumping off point, Indiana Jones hides in a lead-lined refrigerator to shield himself from what? That's certainly a spicy load of shit right there. But then again, this is a franchise that's already had 3 people parachuting out of a plane using an inflatable raft as a chute without anybody suffering anything worse than a loose shoelace. Anyway, Indy's grilled by the feds and under suspicion. He loses his job at the university, and while he's leaving town, he's found by this young scamp, Mutt Williams. An old acquaintance of Indy, Harold Oxley, has gone missing, as has Mutt's mother.
What's your mom's name again?
Mary? Mary Williams, you remember her?
Heard a lot of Marys, kid.
Shut up. That's my mother you're talking about. All right? It's my mother.
Indy and Mutt team up, but not before some Russian-sounding heavies tried to nab them, in the days when sounding Russian was the tell. Mutt and Indy follow Ox's trail to Nazca in Peru, a trail that leads to some mummified conquistadors and an attractive centerpiece for any fashionable coffee table, the crystal skull of somebody who can't readily buy a bike helmet.
Good thing we're not grave robbers.
The Russians catch up with Mutt and Indy.
You survived to be of service to us once again.
Well, you know me. Always glad to help.
Spalko, who has some ESP talent, wants to use the skull to develop it as a psychic weapon, while Indy just wants to return it to its rightful place, just as Ox had attempted to do before going a little bit loopy. The Russians have an ace up their sleeves, Mutt's mother. Oh geez, now would you look at that? It's Marion.
Oh, for God's sake, Indy, it's not that hard.
No, I mean, I never thought that.
I would have a life after you left.
That's not what I meant.
Then we have a long sequence that consists of escapes and then recaptures. Escapes and recaptures. Mutt is Indy's son, escape and then what?
Henry Jones III.
What a twist of lemon.
Grab on! Go get something else.
Like what?
He grabbed the rope!
Grab the rope!
Then the film decides to flush its remaining goodwill by a protracted sequence that all too often goes from swashbuckling to something out of a comic, unreal action. You know, characters surviving 3 waterfalls, Mutt managing to balance on 2 parallel vehicles while fencing and getting whacked in the nuts by foliage, CG ants swinging with monkeys, and are you still here? After not dying from about a dozen incidents that would most likely have been fatal, the group ends up in an ancient temple where it transpires interdimensional creatures lived and just want to go home. But Irina Spalko shows up and things kick off.
Space?
Not into space, into the space between spaces.
Indy and Marion are married. A mysterious gust of wind blows Indy's hat to the ground, and just as the audience collectively shouts, "No, dear God, no," Indy retrieves his hat and Mutt can seriously go and get far.
What?
After rapping on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, George Lucas in particular seemed to have cooled on the idea of any further Indiana Jones features. Instead, he concentrated on bringing to life young Indiana Jones on television, which was used as a sort of test bed for using video and computer effects as a way to reduce costs and increase the scale of his productions. Ford was a megastar in the 90s, mixing action flicks and dramas.
How dare you, sir?
Spielberg more or less did the same, where he'd mix serious films like Amistad, Schindler's List, or Saving Private Ryan in amongst popcorn flicks like Jurassic Park. Lucas did have an idea that he wanted to do for Indiana Jones. He would set it in the 50s and make it like a 50s B-movie, a mix of Cold War spy antics and science fiction. Problem was, Harrison Ford wasn't having none of that. Spielberg was also having none of that. There was none of that to be had because no one was having none of that. And so, we as audiences weren't having none of that.
Oh, for the love of God, shut the hell up!
Spielberg and Ford both objected to the film moving away from the supernatural MacGuffins in favour of a science fiction one. Over the years, Ford and Spielberg had become used to Lucas's stanky idea that he wouldn't let go of, and had gotten to the point where they just wanted to make an Indiana Jones film more than retain their artistic integrity, because integrity doesn't get you a solid gold toilet. So in 2008, moviegoers who'd had none of that on the big screen for close to 2 decades were finally going to get some of that, and when they saw the film, they again wanted none of that.
What is it, quicksand?
I'm calm.
No, it's a dry sand pit.
I'm sinking,
Quicksand
but I'm
is a
calm.
mix of sand, mud, and water, and depending on the viscosity, it's not as dangerous as people
Oh, for
sometimes
Pete's sake,
think.
Jones, we're not in school.
Indiana Jones 4 script had been kicking around for many years, with various writers taking a stab at the film. At one point, the film was called Indiana Jones and the Sorcerermen from Mars, but this was at a time when Spielberg and Ford were united in their stance of having none of that. The success of Independence Day in 1996 knocked any Indiana Jones film featuring Sorcerermen off course for quite a while. By the mid-2000s, Lucas had finished with his Star Wars prequels and was ready to compromise in some areas in order to get Indiana Jones going again. Thusly, the aliens were not spacemen but interdimensional beings. Potato, potato, Nevada, Nevada, aluminum, aluminium. It's a film from 2008, so confidence in using a lot of CG was high, and to be fair, it's rarely really bad CG, but at the same time, it's never so good that you're not aware that it's not computer-generated imagery. I have a theory that once people know how something is done, like, oh, that's just trick photography, or that's just reverse, or that's just a model, or, oh, that's just done with computers, that a type of contempt can creep in. As for, oh, that's just done with computers, well, honestly, what isn't, and what hasn't been for the last few decades.
Why are you bothering to tell me now?
Because I thought we were gonna die.
Not yet.
Harrison Ford was well into his 60s when this was made, but that rarely seems to slow the character down. Indy's a little more circumspect about what he does, but at the same time, quite pleased with imparting his experience and knowledge.
I'm a tenured professor of archaeology.
Oh, your teacher.
Ford proved Indy's line in the first film was what really mattered.
It's not the years. It's the mileage.
Indiana Jones was a high miler, and yet was still tight as a drum. By this time, the ever-reliable actor really should have changed his name to Harrison Toyota. Karen Allen still has that take-no-shit attitude down pat. Marion and Indy didn't marry back in the day, but she ended up marrying a man that Indy had first introduced to her.
You may kiss your bride.
John Hurt as Oxley does seem like a character role that seemed like it was originally meant for Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr. He'd been offered the part but turned it down since it wasn't a major role. Henry Jones III, also known as Mutt, was played by a guy that everyone loved for a time, but around the time of this film's release, soon became that infamous guy who was either quirky or unbalanced, or both, a term we shall describe as unburky.
Power, right. So there's some kind of power. What's the power?
I don't know, kid. It's just a story.
Shia Le Beouf's rising star at the time does make Mutt feel like the character was being primed to take on the mantle as the series' main character, but that did not come to pass. Aww. Harrison Ford, despite his best efforts, did not horribly injure himself during the making of this film. But Le Beouf did. Oh no.
Sorry, Jonesy.
So what are you, a triple agent?
Nah, I just lied about being a double.
Ray Winstone appears as Indy's associate George McHale, better known as Mac. The pair having apparently gone on many adventures together.
Put your hands down, will you? You're embarrassing us.
But here we just see Mac introduced very quickly, and then he's all of a sudden stabbing Indy in the back several times over.
You broke one out. I told you.
Enough! You will speak to Oxley and lead us to Akato.
Cate Blanchett does sound like she's based her character's accent on old cartoons, but unfortunately it's not Boris and Natasha but the 1960s Beatles cartoon.
To place our thoughts into the minds of your leaders. Make your teachers teach the true version of history. Your soldiers attack on our command.
When the film was released in 2008, it was very successful, becoming the second highest earner at the international box office that year. But, like the office photocopier with the mysteriously cracked glass, there was a big but. A lot of people really did not like the film. Too much science fiction, not paranormal enough. It was too fake looking, too much CG, and too much Shia. People were not shy about their antipathy towards the idea of any more adventures with mutt.
From his letter, my mom thought the ox was off his rocker. Smog in the noggin, so she goes down there to find him. Only he'd already been kidnapped.
And this was just before the actor started to publicly eat his foot over and over again, which would lead him to becoming, depending on your take, either a performance artist or an utter knob. I mean, let's just split the difference and call him a performance knob. Le Beauf's costume and the character of Mutt channeled Marlon Brando from The Wild One. Le Beauf's career would also emulate Brando's career in other ways, particularly the period where nobody wanted to work with him.
For an old man, you ain't bad in a fight.
Thanks a lot.
We're exaggerating just a little bit. Le Beauf's career didn't die off straight away because of this film. He starred in a number of Transformers films where people were clearly going to the cinemas to see their boy Shia and a bunch of CG robots. But it was about this time that Shia's course for the Heart of the Sun had been set. Folks really didn't like the CG critters, the prairie dog, the ants or the monkeys. Even though there's a much higher proportion of practical effects than Lucas's previous film, there's still a lot of computer-generated imagery around the place. Spielberg didn't go fully digital. The movie was photographed on film and was edited on film to maintain that feel that you only get from film with all of its imperfections. But by this time it was pretty much seen on mostly digital formats anyway. Oh well. But let's be honest. It was the fridge, right? People really did not like Indiana Jones in the fridge. It's easy to complain that a lot of this film is ruined because there's too much green screen. This is wrong, this is false, this is utterly incorrect. It's ruined because they used too much blue screen. As the film was shot on film, blue was the preferred colour for keying out backgrounds, since blue apparently works better when shooting with film. In an all-digital environment, green as a keying colour apparently makes a lot more sense. Unless, of course, you're filming a live-action Gumby movie. Part of the appeal of Indiana Jones was that he was fallible and vulnerable, and could bite off more than he could chew. Here, he's still screwing up from time to time, but he's also prone to pulling off some ridiculous stuff. Not because that's a good idea, but because it'll look cool once all the CG is in. Let's not kid ourselves that there wasn't a lot of blue screen and process work in the earlier films. But in this film, Indy has gone from the vulnerable hero of old movie serials to a comic book superhero at times. Whip cracking at an age when your hip is cracking.
Not if that's what you love doing.
So, when I said I didn't think this was the least entertaining Indiana Jones film, well, I love the franchise and still think a lesser Indiana Jones is still preferable to watch over many apparently better adventure films. Ford owns this character of Indy, and every second of him in this film, as with Karen Allen, is a joy to watch. After the fridge, the film actually settles down for at least the first half, and feels a lot like an Indiana Jones film. Healthy mix of action, humour, a few dark dramatic moments. But then we have Mutt. And then we have the monkeys, and possibly the most ridiculous scene of the group surviving 3 waterfalls. Mac is completely wasted as a character, since we never actually got to see him working with Indy as his mate. We just got to see Mac's constant switching of sides, which does make me think the writers had just gotten a cat when working on the script. John Williams was back providing a score, proving he still got it. Harrison Ford had proved he still got it. Karen Allen proved she still got it. Spielberg mostly proved that he still had it. Shia Le Beouf proved he didn't get it.
Mutt.
Yeah.
God, her name is
It's the one I picked. You got a problem with it?
Over 4 videos, we have offered our own opinion on the first 4 of the Indiana Jones films, though there are folks who insist they stopped making them with the 3rd entry. Bless.
We have top men working on it right now.
So let's say there are 4 asteroids heading for this heavily populated planet. We'll call it Smurth. Each of these asteroids is named after an Indiana Jones film. The asteroid named after my least favourite, Temple of Doom. It's a good film, great film, but it's more the dank, dark and dickish tones that see this one crashing into an orphanage. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, my 2nd favourite, would crash down somewhere taking thousands of historical monuments with it. The series' high point, by far, Raiders of the Lost Ark, would be a smash, taking out the planet's biggest city. Meanwhile, my distant 3rd favourite, 3rd favourite and distant 3rd favourite, and 2nd least favourite of the first 4 films, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, would bounce off the atmosphere and take out the moon, which would be ripped out of Smurth's orbit on September 13, 1999, destroying much of Smurth with it. Look, I know this does not make a lick of sense to most of you, but neither does a musical version of the stage play of 20,000 Goats Under the Sea, but despite the drawbacks, it does sound like fun, much like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
What exactly am I being accused of besides surviving a nuclear blast?
Also, what happens when these planets get fed up with all of these damn asteroid strikes and decide to band together to take out the big bad asteroid, Rockefeller 41?
Nice try, kid, but I think you just brought a knife to a gunfight.
Steven Spielberg, among others, have downplayed their involvement with certain of the film's choices. As the old adage goes, success has many fathers, but failure is all bloody George Lucas's fault.
Yes.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is not a great film by any stretch of the imagination. It's also not as bad as people would lead you to believe, but what it is a truly disappointing film, because after nearly 2 decades since Last Crusade, I think we just expected better. The faults of this movie are legion, and handily outlined in this 24-volume dissertation, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, an analysis. 24 leather-bound volumes that features no text on any of the pages, just pressings of cat poo.
Wait a minute.
Much of the first half, not all of it, but much, is actually quite decent. The fridge aside, of course. And then it just gets silly. Sillier than Dickhead Dave after a cough syrup bender. So, fun and silly, but I can totally see how your concentration will likely wander once the unrelentingly goofy shit starts up in the second half. By the end, the film has outstayed its welcome like Mariah Carey on Boxing Day.
You gotta be kidding me.
And then of course there's the 2023 release that saw Harrison Ford return in a film directed by Wolverine and Logan director James Mangold in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. A tale for another day.
You're a teacher? Part-time.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and check out some of our other videos.